I don't believe in the paranormal. It was a beautiful sunny day when I moved into the old Victorian house on the outskirts of town. The house had been in the family for generations, and it was known to be haunted. I ignored this claptrap. I wasn't a believer in anything paranormal. As soon as I stepped through the door, however, something felt off. The air was thick and oppressive. It seemed like an invisible force was pressing down upon my shoulders. I dismissed my feelings and continued to explore the house with curiosity. But before long, strange things began happening. At first, it started off small. While I slept, eerie shadows danced across walls and empty rooms, and even stranger sounds echoed throughout each night that made me jump out of bed in fear. Sudden changes in temperature, odd noises that seemed to come from nowhere, whispers echoing through empty rooms. But with each passing day, these disturbances increased more and more, until eventually I knew something wasn't right about this place and decided to leave before it was too late. On one particularly dark night, where thunder rolled outside and lightning lit up every windowsill for miles around, something happened that made me realize what kind of place this really is. A living house filled with pure evil intent. A malicious being that wanted nothing more than for my poor soul to be trapped inside its walls, to suffer endlessly until I succumbed to its diabolical ways. The only thing left for me to do was get out of here as soon as I could, before the cursed dwelling's powerful forces could get any further into my head. On the last night alive, I got up to use the bathroom, only to discover a mysterious figure lurking outside my room, who quickly disappeared back into darkness once they'd made eye contact with me. I froze in fear, not sure if this entity wanted me dead or alive. I leapt out of bed and grabbed whatever belongings I could before frantically running outside into safety. Breathing a sigh of relief and taking in a breath of fresh, cleansed air from the passing storm, the front door flung open and something sinister within the house walls lunged forward towards me and sucked me back into the house. I am now trapped, living alongside this dark entity that is the evil of the house. Nobody ever returned inside that cursed house again, because everyone knew that no matter how inviting it may seem on the exterior, within its walls lurked an evil force so powerful that even stepping foot inside meant risking your life. That evil force is now me. Was it always me? Who knows? Who cares? I don't believe in the paranormal. I am the paranormal. The Green Mist. In the winter of 1870, there was a whaling ship called Freedom's Fortune. It had just reached the waters off the coast of Maryland, ready to dock, after a few months of whaling up in the waters off Maine. The ship was filled with cargo, the men tired from being at sea for months. The water was choppy and the air was chilled. A storm was approaching. A green mist approached the ship as it headed to port. A crack of lightning flashed across the sky. Just then the bosun's mate, Edgar Evers, shouted, "Ship off the starboard bow!" Out of the mist, a ship appeared seemingly out of nowhere. The sails were in tatters, and there appeared to be cannon-sized holes along the side of the ship. The men on the deck of the Fortune were stunned. They rushed to the railings to get a better look. The name on the side of the ship read, USS Independent. The only problem was that the USS Independent was sunk 6 years ago by a Confederate ironclad during the Civil War. The men were spooked. They were staring right at a ghost ship. The ghostly ship had a whole crew working its deck like it was an ordinary night. Their uniforms were tattered and bodies withered to the bone with decaying flesh. The men gasped in horror on the deck of the whaling ship. One man even screamed in terror, his cries echoing out into the eerie, stormy night. When that happened, all the crew on the ghost ship turned their heads and stared directly at the whaling ship. Their mouths slowly opened, and they began to shriek and moan. The crew on the whaling ship began to tremble and froze in place, not knowing what to do. Just then, another flash of lightning filled the sky, and the ghost ship disappeared into the green mist. When the whaling ship docked, the crew told their tale to whoever would listen. No one believed them at first. For almost a year, no one had seen the ghost ship until the same wintry night, a year to the day. A merchant ship spotted it off the coast near Baltimore. It only appears on that same wintry night, every year, on the anniversary of its sinking. This story has been passed down through the generations of my family. My great-great-grandfather was a young lieutenant on the whaling ship, witnessing the first sighting on that wintry, eerie night, an experience that he never forgot or recovered from. He never got on another ship after that or stepped foot near the ocean ever again. Dead can't mix with the living. This is a Coney Island-bound Q train. Next stop, Church Avenue. When I was 12 years old, I saw an old man standing in the middle of the road, butt naked. He was freckled and oily, with thin white hair covering his round body. I was walking to school with my mom, and I made the mistake of making eye contact with him. Because I was young and didn't know any better, I waved at him. The old man started shrieking, and he ran at me as fast as he could. I tried to step back, but fell over. The man jumped at me like he was leaping off the high dive, and everything went dark. I woke up 2 days later in the hospital. My mom said I collapsed, and then just started screaming. I wouldn't stop. I didn't know it then, but the old man I saw was a ghost. I don't know why I could see him, or why he chose to possess me. Maybe it's because my dad died when I was very young. I've always felt like I was towing the line between life and death. Either way, I'll always remember that first possession. Even now, a decade later, riding the subway just trying to get home. Next stop, Beverly Road. The second time I was possessed, I was walking back from my part-time job at KFC. I saw a kid crying with his hands covering his face in an alley. I felt bad for him, so I went to see what was wrong. "Hey, you okay, kid?" I got down on one knee next to him. "You all right?" The kid's hand shot from his face to mine, revealing pitch-black eyes. I let out a short scream before passing out. It took a week to wake up from that one. The dead want nothing more than to possess the living, not for any nefarious reason, just to feel alive again. Only the dead can't mix with the living, and as the dead in you shrivels up, it takes some of your life with it. Or, in my case, a lot. I knew if I got possessed again, it would be the last time. I had to isolate myself completely and hope a ghost wouldn't find me. Next stop, Cortelia Road. I've gone years without an incident, and all I have to do is make one more stop on the subway. I'll have survived another day. "Hey, buddy, you okay? You look spooked." "Yeah, I'm fine. I froze. Out of the corner of my eyes, I made out the figure standing over me. A woman with wet hair, with blood and a hole in her head. Rotten yellow teeth smiling at me. She spoke to me, and I responded. I made a huge mistake. Before I could get up, she lunged at me. The last thing I felt was my heart beat once, falter, then beat for the last time. Next stop, Newkirk Plaza. Jackson's View Hotel Paranormal Investigation. Jackson's View Hotel loomed in front of me, and one glimpse at the Gothic edifice told me that they were right about this place being haunted. After parking in the empty lot, my girlfriend and I began to unpack. Technically, the equipment belonged to Susie, not me. Her family's well off, and she's interning at a law firm in Chicago. I'm grateful that she's helping me with my hobby, and I'm really hoping to get the footage I came for. There are countless nameless ghosts here, but I was looking for Tommy, who floats. They say he was a cook in the 40s who drowned in the pool one morning. He was only 19. No one in the ghost hunting community has gotten footage of him, but I was confident I could catch him. The first spot I picked was the pool where he died. I set up the tripod so it overlooked the empty basin and its surroundings. Next was the kitchen, which I easily found. The maintenance guy didn't bother with locking doors. I placed a lamp on a dusty countertop and left a camera to record. The final spot was room 121, Tommy's home. Unfortunately, my third camera was broken. I convinced Susie to let me use her phone instead, since mine was dead. After that, we drove away to get some Chick-fil-A and pass the time. We came back at 4 to check the footage and retrieve the cameras. When I got to the pool, I groaned. I must have put the tripod too close to the edge, and it fell. The lens was cracked, and it wouldn't turn on. Tough luck. The camera in the kitchen was fine, though, but when I skimmed through and fast forward, there was nothing. No movement at all. Strike 2. I was passing by the front entrance when Susie called. Randy, where the hell are you? It's been hours. I'm late for my meeting, she shouted. I was stunned. Hours? What meeting? The meeting I was reminding you of all morning, asshole. Just get my phone and let's go. I hurried down to 121 and opened the door. Her phone wasn't there. I looked all over but couldn't find it. So you're telling me, she said when I got back, that you made me wait outside this shithole for hours, got me late for my meeting, and now I can't even call my boss? Find your own way home. She stormed out to the van. I started to follow her, but she was already gone. While I stood there in the lobby, speechless, I heard a noise behind me. I turned around and nearly swallowed my tongue. His cook's jacket hung ragged and wet. His wrinkled feet, white and waterlogged, floated inches above the ground. In his outstretched hand was Susie's phone. His eyes, swollen near shut, beckoned me to take it. I did without thinking. Tommy gurgled wetly. He winked, then disappeared, leaving me in total silence. Again. Henry Hawthorne, Paranormal Investigator. My name is Henry Hawthorne, Paranormal Investigator. At least that's what I go by in the phone book. I'm your one-stop shop for anything supernatural. Got a demon that needs to be exorcised? No problem. Ghosts whispering to you in your sleep? I'm your guy. and I'm not cheap. My real profession is being a con man, of course. That's right, a downright charlatan. The truth is, there's no such thing as the supernatural. It's made up. Poltergeists, goblins, ghouls, fake, all of it. But get me on the phone and I convince you it's real. Today, I was visiting a man who called me up to exercise his refrigerator. I should charge more for this shit. So this guy leads me to his kitchen, starts spilling his guts. How he's being watched, having nightmares. Keep in mind, I've heard this all before, but I play along. This morning he found what's been watching him. Scared him so bad he ran to his phone book and called the first name he found under Paranormal. "Do you mind if I take a look?" I said, pointing to the fridge. "I can't be in the room for this," he said, and left the room. "Thank God he's gone," I muttered, opening the fridge. Maybe there's beer in here. Inside the refrigerator was something truly disturbing. A tightly wound coil of eyeballs, torn optic nerves still attached, braided together like a snake. "Never seen that before," I said. I did the only reasonable thing. I called the damn cops. "Get down here. I'm in a serial killer's house. You'll want to hurry. I'm looking at a bunch of eyeballs strung up like a fucking popcorn necklace." My client walked back in. "Did you take care of it?" That's when the coil woke up. The eyes slithered out of the fridge, swimming through the air like an eel. It shot across the room and wrapped tightly around my client's throat. "What the fuck?" I shrieked. The eyes started constricting until I heard a snap, and the guy hit the floor. It was wrapped so tight around his throat, his eyes started to pop out of their sockets. That thing took them, unwrapped from his neck, and ripped the eyes out of his head before absorbing them into the coil. Now it's just me and this freak creature, staring at me with all its fucking eyes. I know it wants mine. I do the only thing I can think of to keep myself alive. I run over and pull a knife from the knife rack. The thing's around my throat when I slashed a knife across my own eyes. Then I feel it release from my neck and flee. Suddenly, there was a loud knocking at the door. "This is the police!" I was alive. Blind, but alive. Now I just had to convince the police I had nothing to do with my client's murder, which, all things considered, would probably be the easiest part of my day. Skim. I was incredibly excited to move into my new home. It's secluded, spacious, and perfect for my work. As I was unloading my furniture and equipment, I saw a slip of paper out of the corner of my eye. Someone, probably the previous resident, left some desperate message for me to read, but I quickly skimmed it and tossed it away. It was always the same kind of thing with these decrepit old houses. This particular note was something like, "For your own safety, don't stay here. You will be haunted." As a researcher of paranormal phenomena, there was nothing I wanted more. And the note was right. I've been seeing ghosts out of the corner of my eye. A swift scurry from one room to another, a careful peek around a corner, a frightened gasp, and the patter of feet when I enter a room. I've been tracking their movements and following them, and today, I've finally cornered one. It's the spirit of a young boy, no more than 8 years old. I found him hiding in the back of the pantry, curled up, crying. "You don't have to be afraid. I won't hurt you, I promise." I smile and gently reach out my hand for the boy to take. He grabs my arm and, with a strength more than any ghost I've ever encountered, drags me close so I can hear him. He frantically whispers, barely audible, "I'm not afraid of you. I'm afraid of that." shakily, pointing at something behind me. My eyes widened as I could feel hot, feral breath against the back of my neck and the dripping guttural snarl of something immense and fanged. If only I had taken the time to read the note more thoroughly. It didn't say haunted. It said hunted. My little scary paranormal experience. We were in our first home in Switzerland. It was a few years ago already, but I can still remember it well. The apartment on the second floor, where we lived, was rented by a landlord that owned a 3-story wooden house, as they are typically built around the area, while living on the first floor. He was an old man, over 80 years old, and his health condition wasn't the best. Sometimes during the night, we could even hear him on the floor beneath, how he screamed the name of his wife, who died long ago. As a 10-year-old, that scared me. Safe to say was that during the day he behaved normally and really liked to hear a specific channel on his radio. Unfortunately, after a few months, the landlord passed away from natural causes. We have been good friends with him. Sometimes he would give me some cookies, other presents to my parents, and we returned with other gifts as well. It was a little sad at first, but we quickly let it pass and kept on with our lives. After his death, weird things started happening. During the night, while trying to sleep, we all heard footsteps on the upper floor, which was locked, with no one living there. This strange scene would happen frequently from then on. Our horror was just starting, as we couldn't find any explanation for what was happening. But then, the most terrifying moment of my life happened. I couldn't get to sleep with those footsteps over my head, so at midnight I decided to go to the living room to see if they would stop there. They did, but something worse happened. We had those big, boxy televisions that we all know. That television had normal TV channels, but also had a radio mode, where you could only play live radio, a feature we had never used. I sat in front of it, on the sofa, and then, without a single person touching the remote on the table, the television turns on. And that's not it. It was in that radio mode. For the final spooky touch, it was on the exact channel our landlord listened to on his radio. My first reaction was a scream, which broke my parents, making them come to the living room. They too were shocked with what happened. This moment was the end for us. We couldn't stand these unexplained sounds above anymore, and that paranormal event chilled us to our bones. We decided to move out and leave. After that, nothing else happened to us. What if it was the landlord's ghost? Is he still there? We will never know. The Voodoo Doll Experiment. It's a nifty trick, developing voodoo dolls. Not the right word for it, of course. My doll is a surgically altered rat carcass, sliced and diced according to a precise and painfully complex mathematical formula to mimic a different human body where it counts. And it's not voodoo, because voodoo is its own thing that I have nothing to do with. I don't mess with people's religion. I deal in science. Well, parascience anyway. And I don't poke the carcass with needles or hold it over an open flame to torture enemies. That's small potatoes at most. I see the innovative tech as fundamentally a new horizon of healthcare. If I can set a connection between a proxy body and a host body, the as above, so below logic of alchemy can and does apply. What happens to the host body happens to the dead rat, and what happens to the dead rat happens to the host body. Tachyon connections between atoms stretch across space and rotate together in real time. Let me say that again, in case you were reading an autopilot. Tachyon connections between atoms stretch across space and rotate together in real time, like an invisible engine interconnected with invisible and barely proven parts that interact with each other in dimensions unseen. I can do invasive surgery on the rat, and the host body of the patient recovers. No scar tissue, no nothing. I can set bones, excuse tumors, patch up gunshot wounds. Well, I can't. I'm not a surgeon, but I can certainly arrange things to allow other people to do it. And this is merely the ground floor. With enough time, I'm sure I can improve the efficiency. I suspect monkey corpses, already extremely similar to human bodies, would make ideal voodoo dolls. Now, it pains me to say it, but advancing this field of paranormal research is going to be coming with risks. Risks that I frankly did not anticipate. It was a plain and simple fuck-up that ruined my first success, embarrassingly pedestrian. I had my first rat doll on the counter and left the room to throw the trash out, and the dog jumped up and snagged it. He knows better. He's just... My test subject was 2 rooms over. The sudden riotous screams paralyzed me. The kid was supposed to be dying of lymphoma. You wouldn't have thought she'd had the energy to belt out that loudly. The state of her after Bandit chewed up the rat carcass turned my stomach. Thank God, she was long dead by the time the stomach acid started dissolving it. When I was possessed and what it felt like. So this happened a few years ago when I was about 23 or so. A small group of my friends were all interested in the paranormal, and they often went ghost hunting, and often they came back with nothing. I, on the other hand, didn't really believe in the paranormal, or I thought there was a scientific reason behind it. Now, this isn't the first time I've experienced something paranormal. When I was younger, I used to see a white orb in my room, but that's a story for a different time. So one day after we were chilling at a local arcade, they wanted to go ghost hunting again, and normally I would pass and go play games at home, but a girl who I had a huge crush on at the time, A, said she's down, and that she bought a thermal camera for it. So wanting to be around her more, we got set off for the night hunt. We drove for about 15 minutes till we reached our destination and parked in a subway parking lot. There were about 6 to 8 of us. There was myself, A, her best friend at the time, C, and the rest I didn't know that well. After we parked, it took us about 5 minutes to reach the local church, and we had to cut through their parking lot to reach a little wooden gate. From there, it took us to a neighborhood, and we had to sneak around and avoid cars, since it was about 2:45 a.m., and a group of teenagers wearing mostly black wouldn't look too good. Anyways, it took us about 10 minutes to reach the woods, where our first ghost hunt location is at. So we got ready, and by get ready, I was checking my Facebook if any of my friends were online. So we started walking, and it isn't too deep into the woods, like I could see homes and such. We were walking on a dirt path, and all I could think of is how much I hate mosquitoes. The walk was boring, to be honest. Nothing happened out of the ordinary, but everyone else was freaking out and saying that they saw this and that. Once we made it through the woods, it led us to a baseball park on the other side of the neighborhood. We sat down and chatted for a bit, trying to decide what to do. Either go around the woods to get back to our cars, or walk back through the path again, which is shorter. We decided to walk back down the path. On our way back, I was near the front, and I made a decision that might have caused what had happened next. Somewhere near the middle of the trail, I started to welcome the paranormal and push it to do something, or anything. In my head, I was saying something like, "Go on, do something to me. Show me you're here. Use my body. Anything." I suddenly started to feel numb and lightheaded. I remember starting to get tunnel vision, like I could see the edge of my vision fading into darkness, and suddenly I woke up to a guy there, holding my face with his hands, and he's whispering or saying something in a different language to me. Everyone was staring at me and asking if I'm okay. I said, "Yeah, what happened?" They said I stopped a few times, that I wouldn't respond when they were asking me questions, and overall just acted differently. They also said I would laugh, but I didn't believe them on that, because I tend to be on the quiet side. After that, everyone was saying that we should call it a night, but they wouldn't let me drive. The next morning, when I woke up, I had some scratches on my arm, but I chalked it off as the tree branches. A's friend C messaged me on Facebook asking if I was okay, and I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." I asked what happened, and she told me about it. I asked about who was there, and she mentioned a few names, but the only name I could remember was Tim or Timothy. She said there wasn't anyone there with that name. Half an hour passed by, and she messaged me back with a website link. When I clicked on it, it opened up to a missing child's page for a kid named Timothy, 8 years old, and went missing a year or two before we went there. The boy's last seen location was the town with the woods. I've also had the urge to go back to the woods for 2 weeks. My first paranormal experience. One of my first memories from my childhood is a weird one, but I recall the events of one night in particular as if it were yesterday. I was fairly young, about 3 or 4 years old. I had an older brother who was 4 years older than me, and we lived with our parents. One night I woke up with a horrible stomachache and climbed out of my crib. I remember vomiting a handful of times before I made it to the hallway. Once I reached the hallway, I could hear a voice that sounded like it was coming from my brother's room. It kept calling out, "Mama," over and over. I stepped into my brother's room, and he was sound asleep. I stepped back into the hallway and felt that the origin of the voice was right where I was standing in the hallway. My attention was brought back to my stomachache, and I turned back towards my parents' bedroom for my first ever rendition of a childhood classic. "Mom? Dad? I threw up." My mom takes the lead this time and takes me to the bathroom, which is directly across from my brother's room. I ask my mom, "Did you hear that voice?" "What voice?" "You're just tired. Let's get back to bed." And that was that. I heard it continuing throughout the night until I eventually dozed back off to sleep. The next morning I woke up to a plumber trying to fix a leak in the ceiling of our hallway between my brother's room and the bathroom, right where I had heard the voice. I remember it being an issue because the plumber couldn't seem to find the source of the leak and left with a sort of not sure what to do vibe about his exit. I remember that voice. I always will. I'm 33 now and am married with 2 kids of my own. My oldest is in the middle of sleep training and just woke up from a nightmare. She's been calling out for her mama. I remember that voice. I would like to give a heartfelt thank you to the special friends of the channel. Your generosity means the world to me. If you would like to support the channel, the link is below in the description. Also, please send me your stories to duchessofdarkness27@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram at duchess.ofdarkness or Twitter at duchessofdarkn2. I want to thank you all for your support, your kindness, and your encouragement. I appreciate it so very much. Until next time.